The first thing they told me when I got hired at Highgate Psychiatric Hospital was to never, ever go into the basement after 10 p.m. "That's where we keep the industrial cleaning supplies," Mrs. LaRose said, tapping her pen against the employee handbook. "You'll get everything you need from the third-floor closet." It seemed like an odd rule, but whatever. I needed this job. Mom's cancer treatments at UVM Medical Center were burning through our savings faster than I could earn at the Grand Union in St. Albans. Night shift at a psych hospital paid $18 an hour, almost double what I'd been making. The application process had been quick. Too quick, maybe. They hired me the same day I walked in, didn't even check my references. The work itself wasn't complicated. Most patients slept by midnight, and the ones who didn't were usually quiet, just watching reruns in the common rooms or pacing the hallways in their hospital slippers. The building dated back to 1947, all pale green walls and vinyl floors that squeaked under my sneakers. My rounds took me through 3 floors: the residential wings, the therapy rooms, and the administrative offices. Empty the trash, mop the floors, wipe down surfaces. Simple. Mrs. LaRose had given me a key card that accessed everywhere except the basement and a room on the second floor marked "Storage, Maintenance Only." She'd also handed me a laminated sheet of rules, which I'd shoved in my back pocket without reading standard stuff. I figured, don't bother the patients, clock in on time, wear your badge. The hospital sat just off Route 78, surrounded by pine trees that blocked out most of the moonlight. At night, the parking lot was empty except for my beaten Chevy Blazer and whatever car the on-call nurse drove. The nearest town, Swanton, rolled up its sidewalks by 9 p.m. Out here, you were alone with the wind pushing through the branches and the occasional truck grinding gears on the highway. My first 3 shifts passed without incident. I learned which hallway lights flickered, which doors stuck, which patients were sleepwalkers. There was an old man on the first floor who called everyone Lieutenant, and a woman on the third who spent hours arranging plastic flowers in her room. They were people, just people who needed help. That's what I kept telling myself. But on my 4th night, the main floor supply closet was locked, and I needed bleach for a mess in the east wing. Someone had knocked over a plant, and the dirt was mixing with whatever liquid had been in their cup. I figured I'd just run down to the basement real quick. In and out, 5 minutes maximum. Nobody would know. I should have read those rules first. The basement stairs descended into cold that didn't match the season. It was early September, still warm outside, but down there my breath came out in small clouds. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and somewhere in the walls, pipes knocked against each other like knuckles on wood. The supply room was right where Mrs. LaRose said it would be, at the end of a corridor lined with old patient files in cardboard boxes. I grabbed the bleach and a fresh mop head, my shoulders already relaxing. See? No problem. Just a quick trip. I was halfway back to the stairs when I noticed the door. It stood at the end of a shorter hallway I'd somehow missed on my way in. Heavy steel, the kind you'd see in a bank vault, with a small reinforced window at eye level. A placard bolted to the wall beside it read, "Patient 001, do not engage." My hand was already reaching for the laminated rules in my pocket before I stopped myself. I didn't need a reminder. Patient 001 clearly meant someone was down here. Someone who needed that kind of door between them and the rest of the building. I should have walked away. Should have gone back upstairs and mopped that floor and finished my shift. But there was something about that window. The glass was thick, probably bulletproof, and it had a greenish tint, like old bottles. I could see a room beyond it, lit by a single bulb that cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. I stepped closer. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10, with padded walls that had yellowed with age. There was a bed bolted to the floor, a toilet in the corner with no seat, and a small table with a tray of untouched food. No decorations, no personal items, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived in there. Then I saw her. She sat on the bed with her back to me, wearing a hospital gown that had probably been white once, but now looked gray in the dim light. Her hair was long, hanging past her shoulders in tangles that might have been brown or black. It was hard to tell she wasn't moving, just sitting there, perfectly still, her head tilted slightly to the left. "Hello?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. Her head snapped around so fast I took a step back. But what I saw through that window made my stomach drop through the floor. Her face was young, maybe 25, maybe younger, but her eyes were wrong. They were too wide, the pupils blown out so large there was barely any iris left, just black pools that reflected the overhead light. And when she smiled, her mouth stretched too far, showing teeth that seemed to go back too deep into her skull. She stood up, walked toward the window. Each step was smooth, like she was gliding across the floor rather than walking. When she reached the glass, she pressed her palm against it, and I could see her skin was paper thin, veins visible like a road map underneath. I should have run, should have dropped the bleach and sprinted back up those stairs. But I was frozen, staring at her through the window while she stared back at me. Then I heard it. Not with my ears. It was inside my head, behind my eyes, like someone had reached in and started whispering directly into my brain. "Thank you for seeing me. Now I can see you too." The voice was soft, almost kind. But there was something underneath it. Something that made me think of frozen lakes in March. That moment when the ice looks solid, but you know one wrong step will send you through into the black water below. "Who are you?" I managed to say. She tilted her head the other way, that smile never changing. "Sarah Whitmore. I've been here a very long time, Tyler." I hadn't told her my name. Hadn't said it anywhere near this building, except when I'd filled out my employment paperwork upstairs. "How do you—" "I can see everything now. The shape of your thoughts. The way your mother's illness sits in your chest like a stone. How you count the money in your wallet every morning because you're afraid it won't be enough. You're very worried, Tyler. Very, very worried." The bleach bottle slipped from my hand, hit the concrete floor with a crack that echoed down the hallway. The sound broke whatever spell had been holding me in place, and I stumbled backward, my shoulders hitting the opposite wall. Sarah, patient 001, pressed her face closer to the glass. Her breath fogged it up, and in the condensation, shapes appeared. Letters, words forming backwards so I could read them from my side. "Don't forget to read your rules." I ran. Took the stairs 2 at a time, burst through the basement door into the main hallway where the lights were bright and normal, and the air didn't feel like it was trying to crawl inside my lungs. My hands shook as I locked the door behind me, even though I knew it wouldn't matter. She was down there. Had been down there. Would always be down there. But now she knew I'd seen her, and somehow that changed everything. I stood in the main hallway for a full minute, trying to get my breathing under control. The clock above the nurse's station read 11:47 p.m. 3 nurses sat behind the desk, all of them focused on their computer screens, none of them looking up at the janitor who just sprinted up from the basement like something was chasing him. Nobody noticed. Or maybe they were used to people looking scared in this building. I pulled the laminated rules from my pocket with shaking hands. The plastic was worn at the edges, like it had been handled by dozens of people before me. 7 rules, typed in a font that looked like it came from an old typewriter. Rule 1, Never enter the basement after 10 p.m. for any reason. If you must retrieve supplies, wait until your shift ends and request daytime access. Well, too late for that one. Rule 2. If a patient addresses you by name without you having introduced yourself, do not respond. Complete your tasks and leave the area immediately. Report the incident to the overnight supervisor. Sarah had called me Tyler. Said it like she'd known me for years. Rule 3. Do not make sustained eye contact with any patient for longer than 3 seconds. If a patient attempts to hold your gaze, look at their shoulder or the wall behind them. I'd stared at her through that window for at least 30 seconds. Maybe longer. Rule 4. If you hear someone crying in an empty room, do not investigate. Continue your rounds. The sound will stop on its own. Rule 5. All doors must remain in their current state. If you find a door open that is usually closed, or closed that is usually open, leave it and notify the supervisor immediately. Rule 6. If a patient tells you they can see you or feel you, end the conversation and leave. Do not ask what they mean. She'd said she could see everything, the shape of my thoughts, my mother's illness, the money I counted every morning. Rule 7. Never tell anyone outside this facility about patient 001. This is for their protection and yours. I folded the rules back into my pocket and stood there, staring at the vinyl tiles beneath my feet. They were gray with black flecks, scuffed by years of medication carts and wheelchairs, real, solid. The overhead lights hummed their normal hum. A phone rang at the nurse's station, and one of them answered with a tired, "Second floor, this is Jenny." Normal. Everything was completely normal. Except I'd just broken 3 rules in the span of 10 minutes, and I had no idea what that meant. The spill in the East Wing. Right. I still needed to clean that up. I went back to the supply closet, the one on the main floor, not the basement, never the basement again, and got a new bottle of bleach and a mop. My hands had steadied a little, enough that I could hold things without dropping them. The East Wing was quiet when I got there, just the sound of someone's television playing through their door, Wheel of Fortune, from the sound of it. Vanna White's voice bright and cheerful. The spill was right where I'd left it, dirt and liquid spreading across the floor near room 127. I got to work, mixing the bleach with water in my bucket, soaking the mop, pushing it across the floor in steady strokes. The familiar routine helped. This was something I knew how to do, something that made sense. You smell different now. If you like the stories, please hype the videos from a button like this just above the comment section. It helps the videos to get more reach and perform well. It would take just a few seconds and cost nothing, but would help the channel grow even faster. Thank you. I spun around. An old woman stood in the doorway of room 129, wearing a pink bathrobe and slippers that looked like they'd once been white. Her hair was thin, pulled back in a braid that hung over one shoulder. I'd seen her before during my rounds. Mrs. Bergeron, I think her name was. She usually sat by her window, working on a jigsaw puzzle. "Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you," I said, keeping my eyes on her shoulder like the rules suggested. "Just cleaning up a mess." No, you don't understand." She took a step into the hallway. "You smell like her now. Like the one in the basement. Like winter and old pennies and something else I can't name." My grip tightened on the mop handle. "I should finish this. You should get some sleep, Mrs. Bergeron. She's in you now. Not all the way, not yet. But she's got her hooks in, and she'll pull and pull until there's nothing left but her." Mrs. Bergeron's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's what she does. That's what she's always done." I wanted to ask what she meant. Wanted to know how long Sarah had been down there, why she was down there, what she was. But Rule 6 was clear. End the conversation and leave. "Good night, Mrs. Bergeron." I turned back to my mopping, keeping my head down, focusing on the repetitive motion of the mop against the floor. She stood there for another moment. I could feel her watching me, and the sensation made my skin crawl like there were ants beneath it. Finally, I heard her slippers shuffle back toward her room, heard her door click shut. I finished the floor in record time and moved on to the next task on my list, emptying the trash in the second-floor common room. The television was still on, playing some late-night infomercial about kitchen knives that could cut through anything. 3 patients sat on the couches, all of them staring at the screen with blank expressions. As I worked my way around the room with my trash bag, I noticed something strange. All 3 of them were breathing in sync. In, out, the same rhythm, the same depth. It probably didn't mean anything, just a coincidence. But then, as I passed behind the center couch, all 3 of them turned their heads to look at me. Not a gradual turn, not a casual glance. They moved in perfect unison, their necks rotating until they could see me, and their eyes were exactly like Sarah's had been. Too wide, pupils blown out into darkness. "She sees through us now," the man on the left said. "She's looking at you," the woman in the middle added. "She's very, very curious," the man on the right finished. I dropped the trash bag, back toward the door with my heart doing something arrhythmic and painful in my chest. The 3 patients tracked my movement, their heads moving together like they were connected by invisible strings. Then, all at once, they blinked. When their eyes opened again, they were normal. Regular pupils, regular expressions. The woman in the middle yawned and stretched. "Is it midnight already?" she asked, her voice perfectly ordinary. I didn't answer. Just grabbed my trash bag and got out of there, my sneakers squeaking against the floor as I walked too fast toward the stairwell. Behind me, I heard the man on the left laugh, a normal, human laugh that somehow made everything worse. Rule 2. If a patient addresses you by name without you having introduced yourself, do not respond. Rule 3. Do not make sustained eye contact with any patient for longer than 3 seconds. Rule 6. If a patient tells you they can see you or feel you, end the conversation and leave. I'd broken them all. And Sarah Whitmore, patient 001, locked in her basement room behind that steel door, was spreading through the building like mold through drywall, through me. I spent the next hour avoiding patients, kept my head down, moved quickly through my tasks, didn't make eye contact with anyone. When I had to empty trash in occupied rooms, I knocked first and waited for permission. If someone tried to talk to me, I gave one-word answers and kept moving. By 1:30 a.m., I'd almost convinced myself that everything was fine. What happened in the common room was just a weird coincidence. Mrs. Bergeron was confused, Sarah was locked in the basement, and I'd never go down there again, so everything would go back to normal. Then I walked past the window on the second-floor landing. The hospital's east wing faced the parking lot and the woods beyond it. During the day, you could see Route 78 through the trees, watch cars heading toward the Canadian border at night. It was just darkness, and the occasional sweep of headlights from the highway. But tonight, there was someone standing in the parking lot. A woman in a hospital gown, barefoot on the asphalt, her hair hanging loose around her shoulders. She stood perfectly still beneath one of the parking lot lights, her face tilted up toward my window. Even from the second floor, I could see her smile. Sarah. But that was wrong. She was locked in the basement. Heavy steel door, reinforced window, patient 001, do not engage. There was no way she could be outside. No way she could have gotten past the security doors, past the nurses, past everything designed to keep her contained. I blinked, and she was gone. just the empty parking lot and my Chevy Blazer sitting alone under the light. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. I'm not really out there, Tyler. But I could be, if you keep looking. I deleted the message with shaking fingers and shoved my phone back in my pocket. Focus. Just focus on the work. 3 more hours until my shift ended. 3 more hours, and then I could go home and sleep and figure out what to do. The 3rd floor hallway was darker than it should have been. Half the overhead lights were out, leaving pools of shadow between each fluorescent fixture. I pulled my cart along behind me, the wheels squeaking against the floor, and tried to remember which rooms needed attention. Room 304. Mr. Laporte, the Korean War vet who thought everyone was his commanding officer. His room was always neat, bed made with hospital corners, his belongings arranged in precise rows on his dresser. I knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Still nothing. The door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual. Most patients didn't lock their doors. I pushed it open and reached for the light switch. Mr. Laporte sat in his chair by the window, facing away from me. His posture was strange, too straight, too rigid, like someone had posed him there. Mr. Laporte, just here to empty your trash. I'll be quick. He didn't respond, didn't move. I stepped into the room, leaving my cart in the hallway, and grabbed the small wastebasket beside his desk. It was empty except for a single tissue. I should have just left. Should have backed out of that room and moved on to the next one. But something made me walk around to see his face. His eyes were open, wide open, staring at nothing, pupils huge and black. His mouth hung slack, and when I leaned closer, I could see his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Alive, but not present. Not home. She's visiting him right now, a voice said from the doorway. I spun around. A woman in scrubs stood there, her arms crossed, a name tag clipped to her pocket that read, Supervisor K. Duchesne. She was older, maybe 50, with gray streaks in her dark hair, and the kind of expression that suggested she'd seen everything this hospital could throw at her. What happened to him? I asked. Patient 001 happened. You went down to the basement tonight, didn't you? It wasn't really a question. She already knew. I nodded. Duchesne sighed and stepped into the room, checking Mr. Laporte's pulse at his wrist. He'll come back in an hour or so. They always do. But while she's in his head, he's just... She gestured at his frozen form, empty. A room she's walking through. How is that possible? You read the rules? Yes. Then you know you weren't supposed to make eye contact with her. Weren't supposed to let her see you. But you did. And now she's got a connection. Duchesne let go of Mr. Laporte's wrist and turned to face me. She can slip into the minds of anyone in this building. Staff, patients, doesn't matter. Most people she just skims, gets little bits of information, surface thoughts. But you? You made direct contact, looked right at her. Now she can dig deeper with you. What does she want? Same thing she's wanted for 70 years. To get out. To be free. But she can't leave her room physically. So she travels through consciousness instead. Hops from mind to mind, like stepping stones across a river. Duchesne moved toward the door. Come with me. We need to talk. I followed her to a small office near the nurse's station. The nameplate on the door read, K. Duchesne, Night Supervisor. Inside, the walls were covered with staff schedules and patient charts. She closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit. Sarah Whitmore was admitted in 1952, Duchesne said, settling into her desk chair. She was 19 years old. Told doctors she could see the spaces between thoughts, that consciousness was a physical place she could walk through. They diagnosed her with schizophrenia, tried every treatment available at the time. Electroshock, insulin therapy, experimental drugs. Nothing worked. What happened to her? The treatments changed her, opened her up somehow, made what she saw become real. By 1955, staff members were having breakdowns. Patients were going catatonic. The hospital board decided to contain her in the basement, where she couldn't affect as many people. But she got to me. She's affecting patients right now. Because you looked at her. You created a bridge, and now she can cross it whenever she wants. Duchesne pulled a file from her desk drawer. Old, yellowed paper held together with a rusty clip. We've had 43 night janitors over the years. Most quit after the first week. A few lasted longer. One made it 3 months before he drove his car into Lake Champlain. The air in the office felt too thin. Why didn't you warn me better? Why hire people at all if this is what happens? Because someone has to clean the building, Tyler. Someone has to do the work, and the rules usually keep people safe. If you follow them, if you don't engage with her, she can't get a strong hold. You'll feel watched sometimes, get strange dreams maybe, but nothing permanent. Duchesne opened the file. But you broke 3 rules in your first week. That's a problem. Inside the file were drawings. Beautiful, intricate pencil sketches of faces and places and shapes that seemed to shift when I looked at them too long. At the bottom of each page, in neat handwriting, S. Whitmore, 1952. She made these during her first month here, Duchesne said, before the treatments. Look at them. Really look. I studied the drawings. They weren't random. Each one showed the same thing from different angles. People with threads connecting their heads, thin lines that stretched between them like spider silk. And in the center of each drawing, a young woman reaching out to touch the threads. She wasn't crazy, I said quietly. No, she wasn't. She could genuinely see something the rest of us can't. The problem is, when they tried to cure her, they didn't close her off from what she saw. They broke her ability to control it. Duchesne closed the file. Now she's trapped in that room, and everyone she touches becomes part of her prison. She can see through their eyes, hear through their ears, feel what they feel. It's the only way she can experience the world. So, what do I do? You have 2 choices. Quit tonight and hope the connection fades over time. It will eventually. You'll have nightmares for a few months, maybe feel watched, but you'll be okay. Duchesne leaned back in her chair. Or you stay. You learn to live with her presence. You follow the rules perfectly from now on, and you help me keep this hospital running. Why would I stay? Because you need the money for your mother's treatment. Because jobs that pay $18 an hour don't grow on trees in Franklin County. And because, despite everything, Sarah doesn't want to hurt people. She's lonely. She's been alone in that room for longer than either of us has been alive. Duchesne's expression softened slightly. If you stay, if you're careful, you might actually help her. Help us find a way to give her some peace. My phone buzzed. Another text from that unknown number. I don't want to hurt you, Tyler. I just want to be seen. I looked at Duchesne. If I stay, what happens next? You finish your shift. You follow every single rule from now on. And tomorrow night, we start figuring out how to help Sarah control what she's become. She stood up. But first, Mr. Laporte needs to be checked on. She should be done visiting him by now. We walked back to room 304 together. Mr. Laporte was awake, blinking in confusion, his hand pressed to his forehead like he had a headache. Lieutenant, he said when he saw me. What time is it? Almost 2 a.m., sir. You should get some rest. He nodded and shuffled toward his bed, already half asleep again. I emptied his trash and left quietly, Duchesne following behind me. You did fine, she said. Tomorrow night, bring a notebook. We have a lot to discuss. I finished my shift in silence, my mind full of drawings and threads, and a young woman who'd been locked in a basement for 70 years because no one understood what she was. I didn't sleep that day. Tried to, lying in my bed with the blinds drawn. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face pressed against that window. Saw those drawings of threads connecting everyone's minds. Around noon, I gave up and drove to the hospital in Burlington to sit with Mom during her chemotherapy session. She looked small in the treatment chair, the IV drip feeding poison into her veins to kill the cancer that was trying to kill her. Her head was wrapped in a blue scarf she'd bought at the farmer's market in St. Albans. She smiled when she saw me. "You look tired, honey. They working you too hard?" "Just adjusting to nights. It's different." I pulled up a chair beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but the truck apologized afterward." She laughed, then coughed. The nurse brought her water. "Dr. Patterson says the numbers are improving slowly, but improving." We sat together while the bag emptied, talking about nothing important. She told me about her book club meeting, about how Mrs. Chen from down the street had brought homemade apple pie. I told her about the hospital's old architecture, the way the floors squeaked, carefully editing out everything about Sarah and the basement and the rules I'd broken. When visiting hours ended, I kissed her forehead and drove home. Slept for 2 hours on the couch. Had dreams about threads connecting heads, about walking through corridors inside someone else's mind. I arrived at Highgate Psychiatric Hospital at 9:45 p.m. with a notebook and 3 cups of gas station coffee. Duchenne was waiting in her office, a stack of old files spread across her desk. "You came back," she said. "I need the money, and..." I set the coffee down. I keep thinking about those drawings, about how scared she must have been when the doctors didn't believe her. She was terrified. "Read this." Duchenne pushed one of the files toward me. Her intake interview from October 1952. The paper was brittle. The typewriter ink faded to gray, but the words were clear enough. Sarah Whitmore, age 19, daughter of Robert and Ellen Whitmore of Newport, Vermont. Brought in by her parents after 3 weeks of increasingly strange behavior. She'd stopped sleeping, spent hours drawing maps of things that didn't exist, insisted she could walk through other people's thoughts, like walking through rooms in a house. The interviewing psychiatrist's notes were dismissive. Patient displays classic schizophrenic ideation. Recommend immediate treatment to prevent further deterioration. But attached to the file was a letter, handwritten, dated November 1952. "Dear Dr. Morrison, please, you have to believe me. I'm not sick. What I see is real. Everyone has these spaces around them, like doorways into their consciousness. I can step through them. I can see what they're thinking, feel what they're feeling. It started when I was 16, just small glimpses. But now it's constant. Every person I look at, I see the entrance to their mind. I don't want to go in. I never wanted this. But when you did the electroshock treatment, something broke. Now I can't control when I slip through. I'm in the nurse's head right now while I'm writing this. I can see her worrying about her daughter's piano recital. I can taste the coffee she had for breakfast. Please help me learn to control it. Don't try to make it go away. It won't go away. It's part of me. Sarah. I set the letter down. Did Dr. Morrison listen? No. He increased her treatment schedule. More electroshock, new experimental drugs from a pharmaceutical company in Massachusetts. By December, Sarah had stopped trying to explain herself. She'd learned that every time she talked about what she could do, they hurt her more. Duchamp pulled out another file. This one was thicker, dated 1954 to 1955. Inside were incident reports. Staff members collapsing at their desks, waking hours later with gaps in their memory. Patients screaming about someone walking through their heads. A nurse who quit after seeing Sarah in her dreams for 3 consecutive nights, even though Sarah had never left her room. The treatments didn't close her off from consciousness, Duchesne said. They tore down every wall she had, made her presence leak into everyone around her. By 1955, the hospital board voted to move her to the basement containment room. They built the steel door, installed the reinforced window, limited her contact with others to once weekly check-ins. For 70 years? For 70 years. She's had 3 doctors during that time. The current one, Dr. Pelletier, visits her every Sunday afternoon, brings her books, plays chess with her through the window. He's the one who suggested maybe we could help her learn control instead of just containing her. I opened my notebook. So, what's the plan? First, you need to understand what you're dealing with. Sarah's not malicious, but she's powerful. Every time you broke a rule the other night, you made yourself more accessible to her. Right now, she can skim your surface thoughts when she focuses on you. If you make prolonged eye contact again, she'll be able to go deeper. What happens if she goes all the way in? We don't know. No one's ever let her in completely, but theory suggests she could inhabit you fully, see everything you've ever experienced, maybe even control your actions for brief periods. Duchesne leaned forward. That's why the rules exist. They're boundaries, ways to keep her presence manageable. My phone buzzed. The unknown number again. I heard you talking to your mother. The treatment is working. Her white blood cell count improved by 12%. I showed Duchesne the text. She's listening through you, Duchesne said. But look, she's trying to be helpful. She knows that information would comfort you. Another text. I'm sorry I'm in your head, Tyler. I don't know how else to talk to anyone. I typed back before I could stop myself. Can you stay out of my thoughts about my mom? The response came immediately. I'll try. Sometimes it's hard to control where I go, like trying to avoid seeing something that's right in front of me. But I'll try. Duchesne watched me type. This is progress. She's responding to boundaries. That's good. It means she wants to cooperate. What do we do next? We need to understand the full extent of her abilities. Dr. Pelletier has been working on a theory that Sarah's consciousness exists partially in a space adjacent to normal reality. When she enters someone's mind, she's actually pulling herself through them into our world temporarily. If we could help her exist here without needing a host. A scream echoed from the 3rd floor, high-pitched, panicked, cutting through the quiet hospital like a knife. We ran, took the stairs 2 at a time, burst into the 3rd floor hallway to find 2 nurses standing outside room 312. Inside, a patient was convulsing on her bed, her body arching so severely I thought her spine would snap. She's having a seizure, one of the nurses said. We called for the doctor. But I knew it wasn't a seizure. The patient's eyes were open, pupils blown wide, and her mouth moved soundlessly like she was trying to speak. On the wall beside her bed, written in what looked like condensation, were words, "Help me, help me, help me." I pulled out my phone, texted, "Sarah, let her go. You're hurting her." The response was immediate. "I can't. I'm stuck. Something went wrong. Help me." The patient's convulsions intensified. Blood started trickling from her nose. The nurses were trying to hold her down, keep her from hurting herself, but it was like wrestling with someone possessed. Duchesne grabbed my shoulder. "You have to go down there. You have to talk to her directly. She's panicking, losing control, and that patient's going to die if we can't pull Sarah out of her head. The basement? Now? Now. Use the intercom beside her door. Don't look at her directly, but you need to calm her down, help her find her way back to her own body." I ran, down the stairs, through the main hallway, past the nurses' station where confused staff were starting to gather. The basement door loomed ahead of me, and I hit it at full speed, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The corridor was exactly as cold as I remembered. The steel door stood at the end, and behind that reinforced window, I could see Sarah pacing in circles, her hands pressed to her head, her mouth open in a silent scream. I found the intercom button on the wall, pressed it. Sarah, listen to me. You need to come back. The patient you're in, she's dying." Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker, distorted and wrong. I didn't mean to go so deep. I was just looking, just trying to understand what it felt like to be healthy. And then I fell through, and now I can't find my way back, Tyler. I can't get back. Yes, you can. Follow my voice. Focus on me. Come back through the connection we have. What if I hurt you? You won't. I'm choosing to let you use me as a path. Come on, Sarah. Come home. The temperature in the basement dropped so fast, I could see my breath. Then I felt it. A presence sliding into my mind, like someone stepping through a doorway, foreign and familiar at once. Sarah's consciousness brushed against mine. And for a moment, I experienced what she experienced. 70 years of isolation. The desperate loneliness of being trapped in a room while the world went on without her. The horror of having a gift that everyone treated as a sickness. Then she was through, back in her own body, and I was alone in my head again. I looked at the intercom. Did it work? Yes. Her voice was small. Thank you, Tyler. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The patient on the 3rd floor recovered. Took about 20 minutes before her vitals stabilized and the bleeding stopped. She woke up confused, asking why everyone was standing around her bed. No memory of what had happened. The nurses chalked it up to a seizure and noted it in her chart. Only Duchesne and I knew the truth. I stayed in the basement for an hour after Sarah returned to herself. Sat on the floor with my back against the wall, talking to her through the intercom while she sat on her bed on the other side of that steel door. We didn't talk about what had happened, just small things. I told her about my mother's chemotherapy, about growing up in St. Albans, about working at the Grand Union and hating the smell of rotting produce in the dumpsters out back. She told me about Newport in the 1940s, about swimming in Lake Memphremagog with her sisters, about wanting to be a teacher before the vision started. Her voice through the intercom was steady, young, nothing like the distorted sound when she'd been trapped in that patient's head. I used to think maybe I could help people, she said quietly. Like if I could see what was wrong in someone's mind, maybe I could fix it. But every time I tried, it just made things worse. Maybe you were trying alone. Maybe you need help. Maybe. Sunday afternoon, Dr. Pelletier arrived. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and a canvas messenger bag that looked like it had been through a war. Duchesne introduced us in her office, where she'd spread out 70 years of files across every available surface. Tyler's the janitor who made direct eye contact with Sarah, Duchesne explained. He's also the first person in 3 years who's volunteered to help instead of quitting. Volunteered might be a strong word, I said. More like I didn't have a choice. Pelletier smiled. Most of the best decisions start that way. I've been Sarah's doctor for 6 years. Before me, it was Dr. Hammond for 20 years. And before him, Dr. Morrison until he retired in 1984. He pulled a laptop from his bag. I've digitized most of her records. The story they tell is consistent. Sarah Whitmore has a genuine neurological anomaly that allows her consciousness to interface with others. The 1950s treatments didn't cause it. They just removed her ability to control when and how it happened. Can we teach her control? I asked. That's what we're here to figure out. Pelletier opened his laptop, showing a series of brain scans. These are from an MRI we did last year. Sarah was cooperative, allowed us to bring a mobile unit down to the basement. Look at this area here. He pointed to a section of the scan that looked different from the others, brighter somehow, with unusual patterns of activity. Her temporal lobe shows activity we've never seen in any other patient. It's almost like her brain has developed an entirely new region, specifically for processing consciousness connection. So she's evolved, Duchesne said. In a way. But without guidance, without training, she's like someone with a limb they don't know how to use. She flails. She hurts people unintentionally. She gets stuck in places she doesn't mean to go. Pelletier closed his laptop. I have a proposal. It's experimental, and it requires Sarah's full cooperation plus assistance from someone she trusts. Someone she has a connection with. He looked at me. You want me to let her into my head, I said. In a controlled way, with monitoring, with boundaries. We'd start small, just surface thoughts, and only during scheduled sessions. The goal is to help her learn to navigate consciousness the way most people learn to walk, deliberately, with control. My phone buzzed. Sarah's text. You don't have to do this, Tyler. I know it's asking too much. I typed back, what do you want? Really want? The response took a minute. Then, I want to sit by a window and watch the seasons change. I want to have a conversation where I'm not locked behind steel. I want to feel human again. I looked at Pelletier and Duchesne. What are the risks? Worst case? She goes too deep during training and you experience some of her memories mixing with yours. Disorientation, maybe some temporary identity confusion. But we'd be monitoring the whole time. Any sign of danger, we stop immediately. And best case? Sarah learns control. We can move her to a better room, give her quality of life, maybe even work toward limited supervised contact with others. Pelletier leaned forward. Tyler, she's been in that basement for 70 years. Every previous attempt to help her failed because they tried to suppress her abilities instead of teaching her to use them properly. You're the first person she's chosen to trust in decades. I thought about my mother in that treatment chair, the poison dripping into her veins because sometimes the only way to heal is to risk damage first. Thought about Sarah at 19, begging doctors to believe her, and the 70 years of silence that followed. Okay, when do we start? Tonight. Right now, if you're willing. We went down to the basement together. Pelletier carried a tablet connected to portable monitoring equipment. Duchesne brought a folding chair, and I brought my notepad and the thermos of coffee I suspected I wouldn't finish. Sarah stood when she saw us through the window. She looked nervous, her hands clasped in front of her like a student called to the principal's office. Pelletier set up the equipment outside her door. Sarah, we're going to try something. Tyler has agreed to help you practice controlled connection. We'll start with 5 minutes. Just his surface thoughts, nothing deeper. Can you do that? Her voice through the intercom. I think so. I've never tried to control it before. I've only ever tried to stop it. That's the key difference. We're not stopping it. We're directing it. Pelletier attached monitoring sensors to my temples and wrists. Tyler, I need you to think about something neutral. Something without strong emotion attached. Can you do that? I nodded. Tried to think about the grocery store layout, the way the aisles were numbered, where they kept the cereal versus the canned goods. Sarah, I want you to focus on Tyler. Look for the doorway to his consciousness. But this time, don't fall through. Just stand at the threshold. Feel the boundary. I felt it immediately. That sensation of someone standing just outside my thoughts. Present, but not invasive. Like hearing someone breathe in the next room. Good. Pelletier said, watching his tablet. Your neural activity is elevated but stable. Sarah, can you tell me what Tyler's thinking about? Groceries. Aisle 3 has the cereal. There's a display at the end cap that needs restocking. The coffee grinder makes too much noise in the mornings. A pause. He's also scared. Trying not to be, but he's scared. That's deeper than surface thoughts. Can you pull back? The presence retreated slightly. Still there, still aware, but less immediate. Better, Pelletier said. Tyler, try thinking about something else. Something visual. I thought about the lake near my apartment building in St. Albans. Small, not worth a name, just a pond, really. But in summer it was nice. Ducks floating on the surface. Kids throwing bread even though the sign said not to. A lake, Sarah said. Gray water, ducks, a willow tree on the far shore. Perfect. Now, Sarah, I want you to step back completely. Return to your own consciousness. The presence vanished. I felt suddenly alone in my own head, which was strange because 5 minutes ago, that had been normal. How do you feel? Pelletier asked me. Weird, like someone was reading over my shoulder and then walked away. Any disorientation? Memory confusion? No, just aware that I was being watched. We practiced for an hour. Each session got easier, Sarah's presence becoming more defined, less invasive. She learned to identify the difference between surface thoughts and deeper memories, learned to knock before entering instead of falling through. Between sessions, we talked through the intercom. Pelletier asked her questions about what she experienced, how the connections felt from her perspective. It's like doors, she explained. Everyone has them, these openings into their inner world. Most people's doors are closed but unlocked. I can push through if I want, but it takes effort. Tyler's door is open. He's choosing to leave it open for me. That makes it easier to control. Why is Tyler's door open? Duchesne asked. Because he's not afraid of me. Everyone else is afraid. Their fear locks the door, makes it harder to be gentle. I have to force my way in, and that's when people get hurt. Pelletier made notes on his tablet. So fear creates resistance, which creates force, which creates damage. But trust creates accessibility, which allows gentleness. Yes. We tried a harder exercise. Pelletier asked Sarah to access a specific memory, the grocery store where I'd worked. Not just any memory, but the day I'd quit, the conversation with my manager when I told him I needed a better paying job. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then, you were standing by the produce section. He was counting register receipts. You said your mother was sick and you needed insurance. He said he understood but couldn't give you full time. You didn't cry until you got to your car. I'd forgotten that part, the crying. Had pushed it down because I needed to be strong, needed to be the one taking care of things. Tyler, I'm sorry, Sarah said quickly. That was too deep. I didn't mean... It's okay. My voice cracked. It's okay. You were following instructions, and you were accurate. Pelletier checked his monitors. Your stress levels spiked, but you're coming down. That's actually good data. Sarah, when you access emotional memories, do you feel the emotion too? Yes, all of it. Tyler's fear, his grief, his love for his mother. It's not mine, but I feel it anyway, like borrowing someone's heart for a moment. Does it hurt you? Sometimes. The strong emotions are heavy, but the gentle ones, the love, the hope, those are beautiful. Those make the loneliness easier. We ended the session around 3 a.m. Pelletier packed up his equipment, promising to return the following Sunday. Duchesne walked him to his car while I stayed behind, sitting against the wall outside Sarah's door. "You did really well," I told her through the intercom. "So did you. Thank you for trusting me. Tomorrow night, same time?" "I'd like that." I stood to leave, then paused. "Sarah? That thing you said about wanting to sit by a window? I'm going to make that happen. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to figure it out." Her voice was quiet, almost hopeful. "You really believe that's possible?" "I do." Upstairs, the hospital was silent. My shift was almost over. Dawn would be coming soon, and with it, another day of my mother's treatment, another day of Sarah's isolation. But something had changed tonight. Something small, but real. We'd found the beginning of a path forward. Over the next 2 weeks, we fell into a routine. I'd arrive at 10 p.m., complete my basic cleaning tasks by midnight, then spend 2 hours in the basement working with Sarah Pelletier came every Sunday to monitor and adjust our training. Duchesne kept detailed records of everything. Sarah's control improved rapidly. She learned to enter my consciousness for specific purposes, finding a memory, understanding an emotion, and then leave cleanly without getting tangled in my thoughts. The invasive feeling faded. Her presence became familiar, almost comforting, like having someone sit beside you while you worked. She started noticing things I missed. During my rounds one night, I walked past room 218 without thinking anything was wrong. Sarah's text came immediately. "The man in 218, check on him. Something's wrong with his breathing." I knocked and went in. Mr. Thibodeau was sitting on his bed, clutching his chest, his lips tinged blue. I hit the call button, and within minutes the night nurse had him on oxygen. Turned out he was having a heart attack. The EMT said if he'd gone another 20 minutes without help, he probably wouldn't have made it. "How did you know?" I asked Sarah later, down in the basement. I can feel when someone's in distress. Their consciousness changes, becomes jagged and sharp. Mr. Thibodeau's felt like broken glass. "You saved his life." "We saved his life. You were the one who checked on him." The hospital staff started noticing. Not the Sarah part, I kept that to myself. But the fact that I seemed to have an instinct for knowing when patients needed help. The nurses joked that I was psychic. Duchesne just smiled and said nothing. Mom's treatment was progressing. The latest scans showed the tumors shrinking, slowly but definitely. She'd started talking about what she wanted to do when she was better. Plant a garden, visit my aunt in Maine, take the cooking class at the community center in St. Albans. "Your mother has strong hope," Sarah said during one of our sessions. "I can feel it through you. It's bright yellow, like sunlight through maple leaves." "You see emotions as colors?" "Sometimes. Everyone's different. Your hope is blue-green, like lake water. Your fear is gray. Your love for your mother is red-gold, warm like a fireplace." I thought about that. About Sarah spending 70 years alone in a room, experiencing the world only through the emotional residue of people she touched. "What color is your loneliness?" She was quiet for a long moment. "White. Empty white, like snow falling in the dark where no one can see it." The following Sunday, Pelletier brought news. The hospital board has agreed to a trial period. If Sarah continues showing control, we can move her to a room on the first floor in 6 months. Not a regular patient room. Still secure, still monitored. But with a window. Natural light. A view of the grounds. Sarah's presence in my mind flickered with something I'd learned to recognize as joy. Through the intercom, her voice broke. "Really? You're not lying to me?" "Really. But Tyler, this depends on you too. The board needs evidence that she can maintain control even when stressed. We need to test her in more challenging scenarios." "What kind of scenarios?" "Situations where multiple people are in distress simultaneously, where she has to choose where to focus, where to help. We need to prove she won't lose control and slip into multiple minds at once. We got our chance 3 days later. It was 1 a.m. when the fire alarm went off. Not a drill. Actual smoke pouring from the second-floor break room, thick and black and moving fast. I was on the 3rd floor when it started, and by the time I got to the stairs, patients were flooding into the hallways in confusion. Some of them screaming, many of them unable to understand what was happening. The staff moved efficiently, guiding people toward the exits. But there were over 40 patients on the 2nd floor, and only 4 nurses on duty. Someone was going to get left behind. My phone buzzed. "Sarah, I can help. I can see where everyone is. Let me help." I texted back while running down the stairs. "Tell me who needs help most." "Room 243. Woman with dementia. She's hiding in her closet. Room 256. Man in wheelchair. He's trying to go back for his photo album. Room 268. Someone's collapsed in the hallway near the bathroom." I relayed the information to the nearest nurse, who got on her radio and dispatched people to those locations. They found all 3 patients exactly where Sarah said they'd be. More messages came rapid fire. Sarah was jumping between minds, skimming consciousness quickly to locate everyone, pulling out just enough information to help without getting stuck. Patient locations, staff positions, the fire's location, electrical. Started in the coffee maker someone had left plugged in. The fire department arrived within 10 minutes. Got the fire under control before it spread beyond the break room. Everyone evacuated safely. No serious injuries except for some smoke inhalation. But when I went down to the basement afterward, Sarah was curled on her bed, shaking. "Sarah, are you okay?" Too many minds at once. I could do it, but it hurt. Like trying to hold on to 50 different conversations while standing in 50 different rooms. "Tyler, I'm sorry. I might have. You saved lives tonight. Everyone got out because of you." But I went into their heads without permission. I didn't have time to ask. I just needed to find them. So I pushed through their doors, and some of them were locked, and I had to force them open and... "Stop. Listen to me. You did the right thing. In an emergency, you did exactly what needed to be done. What if I can't do it again? What if next time I panic and get stuck somewhere?" I sat down against the wall, exhausted, my clothes smelling like smoke. "Then we'll practice. We'll make it so you don't have to panic. Pelletier can design exercises, scenarios. We'll train you for emergencies the same way we trained you for normal situations. You really think I can learn this?" "I know you can. Sarah, you just coordinated a building evacuation while locked in a basement room. You're stronger than you think." The next Sunday, Pelletier brought a gift. He had it wrapped in newspaper, tied with string, and he held it up to the window for Sarah to see. "What is it?" she asked. "Open it and find out." He slid it through a small, secure pass-through slot in the door, the kind used for food trays. Sarah unwrapped it carefully, like the paper itself was precious. Inside was a sketchbook and a set of colored pencils. "I read in your file that you used to draw," Pelletier said. "I thought you might like to start again." For a moment, Sarah just stared at the supplies, her hands trembling. Then she opened the sketchbook and picked up a pencil, forest green, and started drawing. Her hand moved quickly, confidently, like muscle memory kicking in after decades of disuse. She drew the view from her window, the one she didn't have. Trees and sky and birds. Drew the hospital grounds as they might look in spring, with flowers she'd only seen in my memories of the hospital's front gardens, drew faces of people she'd met only through consciousness. My mother in her chemo chair, Mr. Thibodeau with his oxygen mask, Mrs. Bergeron working on her puzzles. "These are beautiful," I said. "This is what I see when I'm in your thoughts. The colors are brighter there, more alive." She looked up at the window. "Tyler, can I ask you something?" Anything. When I move to the new room, the one with the window, will you still visit me? Or will you quit once I'm not in the basement anymore? The question caught me off guard. I've been so focused on getting her out of containment that I haven't thought about what came after. Of course I'll visit. Sarah, we're friends. Are we? I'm in your head all the time. I know your thoughts before you think them sometimes. That's not exactly a normal friendship. No, it's not normal, but it's real, and yes, we're friends. She smiled, and this time it looked completely human. No too many teeth, no stretched mouth, just a young woman happy to be seen as a person instead of a problem. Then I'll draw something for you. What would you like? Draw yourself. How you remember yourself before all this started. She turned to a new page and began sketching. A young woman standing on the dock. Lakeman Frumagog stretching out behind her. Her face turned toward the sun. She looked happy. Free. Human in a way the Sarah locked in this room had forgotten how to be. I was 19 when they brought me here, she said quietly, her pencil moving across the paper. I had a scholarship to the Teachers' College in Burlington, was going to teach elementary school, maybe kindergarten. I like children. They don't lock their doors the way adults do. Their consciousness was easier to visit. You still can. Teach, I mean. Once you're in the new room, once you have more freedom, maybe you could tutor patients, help people. You really believe I can have a life here? I believe you already do. It's just going to get better. When I left that morning, Sarah was still drawing, filling page after page with images of a world she'd seen only through borrowed eyes. Pelletier had stayed behind, talking with her about the fire evacuation, about how to manage multiple consciousnesses simultaneously without losing herself in the process. Duchesne walked me to my car. The sun was coming up over the trees, turning the sky pink and orange. You're good for her, she said. In 6 years working here, I've never seen her this hopeful. She's good for me, too. I know that sounds strange, but it's true. It doesn't sound strange at all. Sometimes the people we're supposed to help end up helping us just as much. I drove home thinking about doors and consciousness, and the way fear locks things while trust opens them. Thinking about my mother's yellow hope and Sarah's white loneliness, and how maybe, just maybe, we were all going to be okay. 6 months felt like a long time, but we'd already made it 2 weeks. We could make it 6 months. We could make it as long as it took. 3 months in, Pelletier proposed something radical. There's a patient on the second floor, he said during our Sunday meeting. Admitted 2 weeks ago. Young woman, 23, claiming she can hear voices that aren't hers. The psychiatrist on her case thinks it's auditory hallucinations, early stage schizophrenia, but something doesn't fit. Her brain chemistry is completely normal. No family history of mental illness. The voices started suddenly after a car accident on Route 7, and they're consistent, same 3 voices saying the same things, never changing or evolving the way hallucinations typically do. You think she's experiencing something real, I said. I think it's possible. And if anyone can tell the difference between mental illness and genuine consciousness perception, it's Sarah. Pelletier looked at the steel door. Sarah, would you be willing to try? Just a gentle touch. See what you find in this patient's mind. Through the intercom. What if I'm wrong? What if I tell you it's real and she gets misdiagnosed? Then we run more tests. We don't change her treatment based solely on your input, but your perspective could help us understand what's happening. Okay, I'll try. The patient's name was Emma Dubois, and she looked exhausted when I met her. Pelletier had arranged for me to be present during his consultation, claiming I was a research assistant. Emma sat in the interview room picking at her cuticles, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that hadn't been washed in days. "Tell me about the voices," Pelletier said gently. "They started the night after my accident. I wasn't hurt badly, just a concussion, some bruises. But when I woke up in the hospital, there were these voices, 3 of them. An old woman, a middle-aged man, and a child. They're not talking to me. They're talking to each other, like I'm overhearing a conversation in the next room." "What do they say?" "The woman complains about the cold. The man talks about his daughter. The child sings nursery rhymes, over and over the same things. It never stops." She pressed her hands to her temples. "Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Maybe I am. But it feels different than my own thoughts. It feels like they're separate people." I felt Sarah's presence slip into my consciousness, gentle as always, and through me she reached toward Emma. I couldn't see what Sarah saw, but I felt her attention focus, felt her navigate the spaces between thoughts. My phone buzzed under the table. Sarah's text. "She's not hallucinating. There are 3 distinct consciousness signatures attached to her, but they're not aware they're attached. They're fragments, residual impressions from people who died in that location. The accident happened at the intersection where 3 people died in 1987. She's sensitive now." The concussion opened her perception. I showed Pelletier the text under the table. He cleared his throat. "Emma, where exactly did your accident happen?" "Route 7, just south of the Milton town line. Near that old barn with the collapsed roof." Pelletier pulled out his phone, searched for something, then showed me the screen. A news article from 1987. 3 die in tragic intersection accident. The location matched exactly. "Emma," Pelletier said carefully, "I don't think you're experiencing schizophrenia. I think something happened during your accident that made you sensitive to residual consciousness. What you're hearing is real, just not in the way most people understand reality." She stared at him. "You believe me?" "I do. And I think we can help you learn to manage what you're perceiving." He glanced at me. "There's someone else here who understands this better than I do. Would you be willing to meet her?" That night, we brought Emma down to the basement. She was nervous, kept asking who she was meeting and why they were kept in containment. I explained as much as I could without breaking Rule 7 about Sarah's specific situation. Sarah stood at her window when we arrived. She'd been drawing more, and the walls of her room were now covered with taped-up sketches, landscapes and portraits and abstract patterns, but somehow made sense when you looked at them long enough. "Hello, Emma," Sarah said through the intercom. Emma stepped closer to the window. "You're the one who can see what I see. I can see more. I can navigate consciousness the way you're learning to perceive it. The voices you're hearing are echoes, impressions left behind by people who experienced strong emotions at the moment of death. They're not ghosts, exactly. They're more like recordings playing on a loop. Can I make them stop?" "You can learn to filter them out. It's like learning to ignore background noise. Right now, everything's turned up to maximum volume because you don't know how to adjust it yet. But I can teach you, if you're willing." Emma looked at me, then at Pelletier, then back at Sarah. "What happened to you? Why are you locked in here?" I was born with abilities I didn't understand, and the people trying to help me made them worse instead of better. But I'm learning control now, and soon I'm moving to a better room, one with windows and sunlight. Sometimes the path forward isn't about fixing what makes us different. It's about learning to live with it safely. Over the next 2 months, Emma visited twice a week. Sarah taught her meditation techniques, ways to create mental boundaries, methods for distinguishing between her own thoughts and external consciousness. Emma's progress was remarkable. Within 6 weeks, the voices had faded to background whispers she could easily ignore. The hospital board took notice. Pelletier presented Sarah's work with Emma as evidence of her control and her potential to help rather than harm. They approved her transfer to the new room 3 months ahead of schedule. The day of the move, Mom came to visit me at the hospital. She looked healthier than she had in months, her scarf gone, her own hair growing back in soft gray curls. The latest scans showed complete remission. The cancer was gone. "I wanted to see where you work," she said, holding my arm as we walked through the main hallway. "You've been talking about this place for months, but you've never invited me. It's not usually a place for visitors." "Well, I'm visiting anyway. Show me around." I took her through the floors, introduced her to Duchenne and some of the nurses. She charmed everyone, asked about their families, complimented the flowers someone had put in the window boxes. When we reached the first floor, I paused outside a door marked Patient Recovery Room 3. "There's someone I want you to meet," I said. Inside, Sarah sat in a chair by a large window overlooking the hospital grounds. Real glass, not reinforced, real sunshine streaming across her face. She wore regular clothes, jeans and the sweater Duchenne had bought for her, and her hair was clean and braided over one shoulder. She looked up when we entered, and her smile was genuine. "Mrs. Hammond, Tyler's told me so much about you." Mom looked at me, confused. How does she know my name? Sarah has a gift for understanding people. She's been helping me a lot these past few months. They talked for an hour. About Mom's garden plans, about the cooking class she wanted to take, about the grandchildren she hoped to have someday. Sarah listened with complete attention, asked questions, laughed at Mom's stories about my childhood. When we left, Mom squeezed my hand. "She's special, that one. Lonely, though. You should visit her more often." "I do. Every night." "Good. Everyone needs a friend." That night, after my shift ended, I sat in Sarah's new room while she worked on a drawing. The window showed the eastern sky turning pink with dawn, the pine trees swaying in an early spring breeze. "Tyler, can I try something?" she asked. "What?" "I want to show you what I see. Not just tell you, but let you experience it. The way consciousness looks to me. Would that be okay?" I nodded. Her presence slipped into my mind, deeper than she'd ever gone before, but gentle, controlled. And then suddenly I could see it. The threads connecting every mind in the building, gossamer strands of light linking patients and staff and visitors in a vast, beautiful network. Each person a node of consciousness, each connection a pathway of shared experience. It was gorgeous, overwhelming and strange, but gorgeous. "This is what you've seen your whole life?" I asked. "Yes. This is why I was never crazy. This is real. It's just real in a way most people can't perceive." She pulled back, and I was alone in my head again, but the memory of that vision stayed with me. The understanding of how connected we all were, how isolation was an illusion, how every consciousness touched every other in ways we couldn't normally see. "Thank you for showing me that," I said. "Thank you for believing it was worth seeing." Outside her window, the sun cleared the horizon. A new day, a new room, a new life, finally, after 70 years of waiting. Sarah pressed her hand against the glass, feeling real sunlight for the first time since 1952. "It's warm," she said quietly. "The sun is warm." Sarah's room on the first floor has become something unexpected, a consultation space. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, Pelletier brings patients to meet with her. People like Emma, who perceive things others can't see. People diagnosed with schizophrenia, who insist their experiences are different, more structured, more real than hallucinations. People who've had near-death experiences or traumatic brain injuries that open doors in their consciousness they don't know how to close. Sarah sits by her window and listens, asks questions, gently touches their minds with permission, reading the patterns of their thoughts to determine what's mental illness and what's genuine perception of consciousness beyond the ordinary. The accuracy rate is remarkable. In the cases where Sarah identifies genuine supernatural sensitivity, patients improve rapidly once they're taught management techniques instead of being medicated for conditions they don't have. The psychiatric community is starting to notice. Pelletier's published 2 papers on differential diagnosis using consciousness mapping, though he's careful not to mention Sarah by name. I still work nights, still mop floors and empty trash, but now I stop by Sarah's room during my rounds. We don't always talk. Sometimes she's drawing, filling sketchbooks with images of the consciousness network she navigates. Sometimes she's sleeping, her face peaceful in the glow from the parking lot lights. Sometimes we just sit together, her presence a quiet warmth in the back of my mind. Mom came to visit again last week. She's taken that cooking class now, started volunteering at the library in St. Albans. She and Sarah have become friends in their own right. Mom brings books Sarah requests, reads passages aloud while Sarah draws. They talk about gardens and recipes and the way sunlight changes through the seasons. "Your boy saved my life," Sarah told Mom during the last visit. "He's good at that," Mom said, squeezing my hand. "Saved mine too." The hospital has changed since Sarah moved upstairs. The patients on her floor seem calmer, more content. The staff notices it too, though they don't understand why Sarah's presence soothes the building the same way it once disturbed it, now that she's learned to control the flow of consciousness around her instead of drowning in it. Mrs. Bergeron stopped me in the hallway yesterday. "The girl from the basement," she said. "She's different now. Quieter. At peace. She learned how to be herself without hurting anyone. We should all be so lucky." Tonight, finishing my shift, I found Sarah still awake at 6 a.m. She stood at her window watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "I never get tired of this," she said when I knocked. 70 years in the dark, and now every sunrise feels like a gift. "You deserve it. The sunrise, the window, all of it." "I know. That's the strange part. For so long, I thought I deserved the basement. Thought I was too dangerous to exist anywhere else. But you helped me understand that being different isn't the same as being wrong." Next week, Pelletier's bringing a patient who claims she can see the moment of people's deaths written on their faces. The week after, someone who says he can taste emotions, cases that would have been dismissed as delusion a year ago, now treated as genuine anomalies worth investigating. Sarah will evaluate them, teach the ones who need teaching, help the ones who need help. She'll continue being the bridge between ordinary consciousness and the strange spaces beyond it. And I'll be here, mopping floors and emptying trash, living a life that's become extraordinary without ever leaving the ordinary behind. Sarah turned from the window, smiled. "Thank you, Tyler, for everything. Thank you for trusting me." Outside, the sun cleared the tree line. Inside, a young woman who'd spent most of her life in darkness stood in the light. Finally home.